which brings me to the second thing. The other thing I think about in terms of fighting back, the advice comes from a baseball player, Wee Willie Keeler. Somebody asked him how he got so many hits, and he said, hit them where they aimed. And I think that's also a very important rule for all, especially guerrilla combat, is to find out where they are and hit them somewhere else. I guess those are the big things I wanted to say about that. And so far as the is there a place where is there a level of violence? I mean, what was it precisely that you asked? Is there violence that would then?
Is there a point where violence is unacceptable?
Is there a point where violence is unacceptable? I would go back to the very first thing you said, that it's circumstantial. All life is circumstantial. I mean, that's like saying, is there a place where sex is not acceptable? Or is there a place where conversation is not acceptable? Those are all just different things, different parts of life. And there are times where it may be incredibly appropriate to do whatever it is one does. And that can change over time. I mean, that can change, certainly will change by circumstance. Well, that was a conversation killer. You didn't need to nod in agreement with that particular statement.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if I understood the question you're asking necessarily, but I want to assert that probably rape as violence is never acceptable in revolutionary struggle.
I agree with that.
There. And then I think y'all might agree that there's a clear distinction between radical activism, right, and what real revolutionary struggle, or possibly what Ward might call a devolutionary struggle, looks like, right? I'm just curious what you think, maybe some examples of that, like how that manifests either right now or historically in the United States, and how it could manifest even.
Okay. I didn't understand it. What do you mean by radical?
Okay, so radical activism is, I think there's a distinction between that and revolutionary struggle, and we'd say radical as politics. Radical politics, people with radical ideals, taking their politics and doing certain things with that, right? But where the agenda is not towards revolutionary ends, I guess. You might be like doing radical or militant things, right? Like, say, anti-globalization movement, right? As an example. People, break the...
I still don't think I quite understand, but since I'm a male, I'll go ahead and answer anyway.
Alrighty, step right up to that one, didn't you?
And I would just go back, and I may, once again, be entirely misunderstanding your question, but I don't have a problem making any sort of I don't have a problem with actions that go halfway. I don't have a problem with celebratory parades, or with confronting parades that are racist, or with breaking windows, or with... I don't have a problem with any of that. I mean, actually, I do want to say this very quickly, that I do have one critique of the ELF, which is I think they should move up the infrastructure. They should find levers to leverage their efforts. Anyway, but so I don't have I don't see. I'm very, very inclusive in the tactics that I see are acceptable. I mean, for crying out loud, I went to a county fair about a month and a half ago and sat there passing out flyers for a local environmental organization, and I mean, at a county fair, and how much difference did that make? I mean, I'm sure it's zero, and I mean, I did it, and it's so I'm very inclusive as long as the people who do less are accepting of those who... Actually, there's something I want to read very quickly.
Read it.
Okay. It arises from the question. I gave a talk one night. Actually, I gave a talk one afternoon and then one night And this one woman came to both of the talks to accuse me of being a combination of Mao, Pol Pot, and Stalin. Because I want to deindustrialize, and her historiography is all wrong. It doesn't alter the fact that that a lot of people rely for their food on industrial civilization. And when I talk about bringing down civilization, there will someday be far fewer people on the planet than there are now. And I got to page 400 or something of this new book, which is 1,300 pages, and I got stuck because I couldn't go forward without recognizing the fact that no matter what we do, we're participating in mass murder. Because if you participate in the system, you're going along. And if you bring the system down, people are going to die. What do you do with that? And I got an answer that I'm very happy with. If you've gotten this far in the book, or if you're simply anything other than entirely insensate, we probably agree that civilization is going to crash, whether or not we help bring it about. If you don't agree with this, we probably don't have anything to say to each other. How about those Red Sox? We probably also agree that this crash will be messy. We agree further that since industrial civilization is systematically dismantling the ecological infrastructure of the planet, the sooner civilization comes down, whether or not we help it crash, the more life will remain afterwards to help support both humans and non-humans. There will be people sitting on the banks of the Columbia 50 years from now going, there are no salmon here. There was a hell of a lot of calories coming up here, and I'm starving to death so that those in power could make cheap aluminum for beer cans. God damn you. They will be saying that. I guarantee that. If you agree with all this, and if you don't want to dirty your spirituality and conscience with the physical work of helping to bring down civilization, and if your primary concern really is for the well-being of those humans who will be alive during and immediately after the crash, then given, and I repeat this point to emphasize it, the civilization is going to come down anyway, you need to start preparing people for the crash. Instead of coming to my shows and attacking me for stating the obvious, go rip up asphalt in vacant parking lots to convert them to neighborhood gardens. Go teach people how to identify local edible plants, even in the city, especially in the city, so these people won't starve when the proverbial shit hits the fan. They can no longer head out to Albertsons for groceries. Set up committees to eliminate or, if appropriate, channel the additional violence that might break out. We need it all. We need people to take out dams. We need people to knock out electrical infrastructures. We need people working to ensure that, we need people to protest, chain themselves to trees. We also need people working to ensure that as many people as possible are equipped to deal with the fallout when the collapse comes. We need people working to teach others what wild plants to eat, what plants are natural antibiotics. We need people teaching others how to purify water, how to build shelters. All of this can look like supporting traditional local knowledge. It can look like starting rooftop gardens. It can look like planting local varieties of medicinal herbs, and it can look like teaching people how to sing. The truth is that although I do not believe that designing groovy eco-villages will help bring down civilization, when the crash comes, I'm sure to be first in line knocking on their doors asking for food. People taking out dams do not have a responsibility to ensure that people in homes previously powered by hydro know how to cook over a fire. They do, however, have a responsibility to support the people doing that work. Similarly, people growing medicinal plants do not have a responsibility to take out dams. They do, however, have a responsibility at the very least to not condemn those people who've chosen that work. In fact, they have a responsibility to support them. They especially have a responsibility to not report them to the cops. It's the same old story. The good thing about everything being so fucked up is it matters where you look. There's great work to be done. Do what you love, do what you can, do what best serves your land base. We need it all. This doesn't mean that everybody taking out dams and everybody working to cultivate medicinal plants are working toward the same goal. It does mean that if they are, each should see the importance of the other's work. Further, resistance needs to be global. Acts of resistance are more effective when they're large-scale and coordinated. The infrastructure is monolithic and centralized, so common tools and techniques can be used to dismantle it in many different places, simultaneously if possible. By contrast, the work of renewal must be local. To be truly effective, acts of survival and livelihood need to grow from particular land bases where they will thrive. People need to enter into conversation with each piece of earth and all its human and non-human inhabitants. This doesn't mean, of course, that we can't share ideas, that one water purification technique won't be useful in many different locations. It does mean that people in those places need to decide for themselves what will work. Most important of all, the water in each place needs to be asked and allowed to decide for itself. Oh, by the way, I have a new slogan, which is dismantle globally, renew locally. I've been thinking a lot again about the cell phone tower behind Safeway. There is no moral reason, by the way, not to take out every cell phone tower you see. And I see now, by the way, cell phone towers kill between 5 and 50 million migratory songbirds per year. Also, the asshole at the next table can talk about his latest stock deal while you're trying to eat. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot again about the cell phone tower behind Safeway, and I see now how these different approaches manifest in this one small place. The cell phone tower needs to come down. It is contiguous on 2 sides with abandoned parking lots. Those lots need to come up. Gardens can bloom in their place. We could even do our work side by side. I don't know if that has anything to do with your question.
But it sounded.
But if it doesn't, it should. What, you want me to respond to it too?
If you want, I mean,
I don't really think between what I've said before and the fact that there's nothing there I disagree with that I'd have much to add to it, actually.
yeah, I could. I thought of, like, while stuff was happening, kind of a better premise to go on, right? As an example, what I was thinking about, like, what I think is the most revolutionary organization of modern history in the United States as a Black Panther Party. And, like, when I say most effective revolutionary organization.
Okay.
And I kind of feel that the failure of the, like, Black Panthers and of revolutionary intercommunalism or Black nationalism or whatever, kind of lends itself, like, maybe also on the state a lot, but also on the backs of white radicals. And what I was thinking about was that as revolutionary struggle and SDS and essentially the failure of white radicalism as activism to create a revolutionary struggle to support the Black Panthers. And that's kind of what I meant when I
Okay, but I think that was in there, where you don't necessarily do this work, but you're obligated to support those who do, and vice versa. I mean, there's no purity in armed struggle.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, but there's no purity in pacifism either. There's a purity in a victory that feeds starving children and prevents the culminating rape of the planet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where the purity is. Now the question is how you get there, and that's Malcolm X. By any means necessary. I could add available, but you make the availability, so it's the necessary part that prevails. Yeah. She just voted again.
I think she has a question.
You got a question?
So we do.
Okay, then.
Any more questions? How are we doing for time, by the way?
Yeah, we got a while.
Running out. Yeah.
It's running out, but we got a few minutes yet if there's anything left.
Earlier, Derrick mentioned violence going down. Is that written already in one of your books?
That's in the new book.
The 1300 pager?
Yeah.
All right.
One of the things I do in that book, one of the things I do in the new book that I'm really proud of is that since really the first rule of propaganda is if you can slide your premises by people, you've got them. An example of that would be you hear some talking heads say, how can we make the economy grow? Premise 1, we want the economy to, how can we make the U.S. economy grow, he says. Premise 1, we want the U.S. economy to grow. Premise 2, we want the U.S. economy to exist. Premise 3, who the hell's we? And
That's a really serious question.
yeah, and, well, yeah, it's a huge question. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. So one of the things I do in the new book is I try to lay out the premises I lay out the premises in boldface so that people can agree or disagree with them. Because if you disagree with my premises, my arguments don't matter. And I won't go through the whole thing because there's a ton of them, but first premise, industrial civilization is not and can never be sustainable. Second premise, traditional, which, well, I was in a car one time with a friend of mine, and I said, if you could live at any level of technology you wanted, what would it be? And this friend was he's kind of a jerk sometimes, and he said, that's a really stupid question, Derrick. You can fantasize whatever you want, but the truth is there's only one level of technology that's sustainable, and that's the Stone Age. And we will be there again someday, and the only question is what's left of the world when we get there. Because any level of technology that requires, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that any way of living that's based on the use of non-renewable resources ain't gonna last. Duh. You know, it takes anybody but a rocket scientist to figure that one out. And by the same token, any way of living that's based on the non-renewable use of so-called renewable resources, because of course salmon don't perceive themselves as resources, but we'll use that for shorthand. Any way of life where there are fewer salmon return every year than returned the year before is not sustainable. And so, industrial civilization, my favorite first line of any book is Stanley Diamond's In Search of the Primitive. Civilization originates in conquest abroad and repression at home.
Could you repeat that?
Civilization originates in conquest abroad and repression at home.